Well, hello everyone, and welcome back in. Well, we're going to set off a new adventure this time. Yep, we're returning back to the Warhammer 40K world, this time in a more traditional form. We're going to at least set it in more or less the same sort of context, no future tripping or time warping. Now, of course, the Warhammer world has all sorts of kits and things that are specific for their purposes. But of course, we're going to do things a little differently here. We're going to take the hard way. So let's look at some references. These pictures here, these are kind of the thematic theme that I'm going to follow. We're building a junkyard scene, and I just like this dystopian, dirty, gritty, concept art sort of things. So this is in my mind, in the back of my mind, these images, this kind of theme, this atmosphere as this project moves along here. What better place to start than with, well, this empty bowl? And, well, we need to fill up this empty bowl because we need a lot of clutter and junk for, well, our junkyard. Now, a friend of mine who happens to own a game store, he had a few extra parts here. So these are actual little 40K parts, and he had a little bit of spare parts in his back room, and he said, hey, Rick, go ahead and take some of these, and maybe you can use them on your scene. So we'll do some of those. I got this sprue here as well. Hey, some of those will work out pretty good. I like that one on the top corner there. And then, of course, well, I don't have a lot of spare parts stashed, but you might recognize these. These are from the ISU 152 and the T55. And there's some nice pieces on there. There's some brackets, of course, the wheels, all sorts of little plates, little doohickeys there and there. And that's what I'm looking for. And we'll start clipping those off. And hopefully we'll get that bowl filled up with little parts here sooner than later. Okay, well, you didn't come to watch me clip off parts. What we are going to do now is start building these buildings. So 20,000 styrene. This is kind of my preferred styrene to use. Nice and easy to work with, but it's stiff enough to hold shape. I'm just going to cut off a section here. Now, in all candor, all disclosure, all honesty, I am not following any plans. I have not sketched this out. The only thing I have is kind of an idea in my head of what I want at least this first building to look like. And I wanted it to kind of follow the idea of maybe an Airstream trailer or maybe a 50s style diner. Thus, you see that rounded corner on the roof line there. Of course, I used a circle template just to kind of give me the shape, and then I cut that out. And now I'm just kind of eyeing it. Let's see, the building should be, oh, I don't know, about this big. That's as close as I get to the measurements. But as I work my way through it, I end up with the shell. And from here, we can start decorating and make this look, well, fancy. Now for the decorations, it'll be a combination of things that I build here. So we've got punch and die making some, I guess we'll call this a door. And I've got the punch and die that I've made some bolt heads. Just give that more industrial look. Got a window sash over there. And well, let's just, make this look like it's all boarded up here. So I've got a little pieces of plastic. I've scored those a little bit. So they got a little bit of wood texture. And we'll just board up that window because, all junkyards have boarded up windows, right? Especially in the future 40K world. And then a few reaches into the little bowl of stuff. And of course, the green parts are all from kits, the old Tamiya kits. And then, oh, look at this. I got the T55 fuel drums. Those are left over from that Somalia scene. So let's turn those into something here. So I've added a few holes, so I drilled a couple holes in there. And one of the keys to this type of a scene, at least in my mind, is that captures my attention anyway, is just to make them look busy. So we've got wires and plumbing and this and that running here and there. And the neat thing is, it really doesn't need to make much sense at all. So, these are obviously fuel tanks, but are they water tanks, or I don't know, is this plumbing or is this electrical? Kind of hard to tell. Got this box here on the corner. If I can get it to stick in place, let's add a little bit more glue. Come on, get there. There you go. And then a couple of holes I drilled into that new little box. And then let's go ahead and add this wiring into those holes. Plug those in there. Again, we're just trying to make this look busy. And, oh, yep. Yes, I'm actually working pretty quickly here, and the glue hasn't set, but that's not a big deal. We'll just squeeze that back on. Well, here over on this side, let's see. We've got, oh, you might recognize those as wheels. Of course they are. Let's turn them into some sort of fans or generators. So add a little bit of tubing and some wiring here again. Add just a little bit of, these tubes on the side here, and they become receptacles for the wires to go into. Just kind of plug those into place. Nice. There we go. And like I said, we're just looking to make this busy. It doesn't need to make sense. And of course, what junkyard doesn't have a lot of corrugated tin everywhere? And if you recall from the Somalia project a few episodes ago, I made some corrugated tin out of my little jig that I made and out of pie plates. So I'll just do that one more time here. Just score those, get the ridges into place with my little jig, and then using some scissors, cut it into shape. And we'll use this corrugated tin a few different places throughout the scene. And actually, after really not a lot of time, we end up with something that looks like this. And I don't know, does it look like a diner or Airstream? And someone actually said it looks kind of like a boat. So maybe it's all that stuff. But either way, we have our first building completed, or more or less completed. I'm always adding things onto this, but now we can start moving on to the next. Also, I'd like to thank my patrons who really make this channel work. And over on Patreon, well, if you like what's going on this channel, there's a lot more content over there. Plus, we have great discussions. And we're having a bit of a contest now where the patrons are selecting the paint scheme for an upcoming project. And the cool part is that there's a prize. So whoever scheme I select, well, that person will receive a copy of the kit as well. So it's pretty cool. So if you'd like a little bit more content and like to be part of this contest, come on over and join the Patreon. So what respectable junkyard wouldn't want a little crane to help lift things up in the air? And so that's what we're going to build next. Letting you see kind of where we're going to end up with this. And this little segment here is about the construction of this little crane. But I understand that, you know, just watching me cut out little pieces that have no context is a little bit difficult to kind of understand where it's going. These, again, 20,000 styrene, adding little blocks around the edge here just to make it easier for gluing parts onto. This little box is going to be basically the engine housing, I guess, the main part of the crane itself. And once everything's dry, just a little bit of sanding around the edges just kind of tightens everything up a little bit, makes everything nice and flush, and then just start building these up. And yes, once again, no plan here, just what to do next, kind of look at it, squint at it, and just start adding parts. And this will be the actual crane, the boom part of it. So I've got a piece of tube in there, and then I'll just whittle out, make a little hole here with my knife, the same circumference or same diameter as this little piece of rod that is the crane boom, and we'll just slide that in there. Nice. And then there we are, back to where we started from. And there's the first one, the first building, and now our little crane. And interestingly enough, this little cutting board that I like to use is kind of about the right shape and size for what might be the final scene. So we'll keep laying it out on that. And here's a little spin around of the crane. The red part on the bottom, well, that's just a lid from, I think it's a vitamin bottle or something like that. I'll end up changing that out later on. This was my first attempt. Like I said, I have no plans, so oftentimes I start something and we'll kind of go back and do something different later on. If you're liking this channel, you like the content, you're having fun here, well, hit that subscribe button. Thank you. Next up, this will be the third and final building of our scene, and this is going to be basically a shipping container, for lack of a better, just a rectangular box. So same idea, just 20,000 styrene, cut the strips out, add those little gluing blocks there just to make sure everything's nice and secure. It makes it much easier to glue onto something with a little bit of meat to it. Use my straight edges just to square everything up while it dries. Nice, 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 good. And there we go, we've got a good start on this. Like I said, just tidy up some of these edges. You can see I've already added a few things here and there. That's a fuel drum from, I think, the T-55, if I recall right. It's going to be raised in the air, so it's got some support beams. I'll make those out of some timbers here, so adding a little bit of wood grain texture to those. Okay, here we go. We'll start adding these supports underneath. Yep, pretty precise measurements there. Yep, that's some good engineering going on right there. And since this building is going to be off the ground, well, we need a little bit of a front porch or a deck on front. Using a little bit of the styrene strips, just kind of cut them out and score them again, give them a little bit of wood grain texture and build this little porch up here. And yeah, I don't know if I would trust it either. It's a little bit, it looks a little shady, but I love this appearance. Everything looks just, you know, just cobbled together. We'll add a few details to the roof here because, well, why not? There's our little building. Yeah, it doesn't look so bad. Nice, nice, nice. Added some of the corrugated tin to the side of that as well. Here's our first building, and there we go. We got our spin. Now this building will change a little bit later on as well. That very top platform, the one that's holding on with the gray box, that whole platform is going to go away because I'll end up with a different idea for the roof line on this. But that's a little bit later. We'll go into that when we get there. So one more time, we'll lay it out on our board here. See how things are starting to come together. Where's our crane? Here's our crane over here on the side. Oh yeah, this little Warhammer piece, it turned out that the ring on that is the same size as the ring on the bottle here. So thinking maybe that could be the platform for this. But as you'll see, I changed everything around. There's going to be a brand new base on the crane, and we'll use that platform, that Warhammer platform, someplace different. So remember how I said I had no little extra spare parts? Well, I was having lunch with a friend, and guess what? He had all sorts of spare parts that he was willing to part with. No pun intended. And then just about at the same time, I remembered, oh, I've got this old Edward kit that's been knocking around in the back of my truck that I totally forgot about. So it's a IL-6, and built up the wing section here just in order to be able to destroy the wing section here. Yep, I'm chopping up Edward kits because that's what I do. Few score lines, and there we go. We got a nice break. Cool. Now I've got a wing section. Take the clippers here, and we'll clean that up a bit. There we go. Just snap those off. And then we'll work on that and get that ready to go as well. And we'll cannibalize all sorts of parts from this kit as well. So pretty much anything that's not nailed down is going to be junk on this junkyard scene. So you'll recognize all sorts of different types of kit parts. Well, I imagine by now you're getting pretty tired of watching me build things and cut out things. So let's do a little bit of painting on some of these extra parts here. It's kind of a warm up for what's going to be probably the next episode where we paint out these buildings. We'll take this Warhammer part first, and I'll just paint it out. I want this, at least that top section, the grid section, to be kind of a oxide, you know, red primer, rusted steel color. So we'll just paint the whole thing like that. I'll pull out the details. Then some of these other parts that I've been pulling out of boxes and cutting apart, well, this is going to be a colorful scene, so just painted those out all sorts of different colors as well. And then, of course, I'm going to go ahead and put some extra parts in there. These are just bits of rod and styrene and tube, and just cut these into small little pieces, and this will be just add to the scene to be become clutter and junk and just miscellaneous chaos. Of course, these are all painted out as well, and getting lazier here. Everything's going to be painted in kind of the oxide color here. I'm in my mass production mode here, so taking those oxide pieces, just do a little bit of sponge painting with a light blue color, kind of gives that little bit of a steel appearance to some of these edges and things. It just breaks up those parts a little bit. I'm not being real careful here, as you can very well see, just dabbing them on here and there. It really doesn't matter. It's just about adding texture and contrast and a little bit of color to these parts, give them a little bit more interest. These larger plates, well, they're a little bit more visible, so I thought, let's spend a little extra time on these. So went ahead and broke out my oil paints. I've been saving these from the last project, so I didn't even have to make new palettes here. And just dabbing on a little bit of a lighter pinkish tone just to show a little bit of oxidation. And these oils do a good job also blending in some of those blue tones and things, and just to add a little bit more character to these steel plates. And then once I started working on these, I thought, well, let's be a little bit tricky here now. This isn't really tricky at all, but let's just let's just have a little bit of fun. So I'm using a little piece of plastic, just basically as a straight edge, as a mask, and I'm just going to add one of those hard lines of, say, rust. You know how when you put like one steel plate on top of another steel plate and you get that edge where they've sat on top of each other? That's exactly what I'm doing here. So I use a little bit of the orange paint along that line, and now we have a nice oxidized, rusty, straight edge line there. Do the same thing with a little bit of blue paint. Give it a little bit more of a steel tone here along this edge. Something different might have been laying on this corner. Who knows? It's just a quick, easy way just to add a little bit of character to these pieces. And then in the, oh, why not category, let's just add a little bit of speckling to this. So the light blue color, thinned out with a little bit of that thinner there. Just kind of tap the brush, put some droplets all over the place here, just randomly. And then come back in a little bit, and anything that's just totally not going to work out, just kind of blend those away a little bit, just kind of soften some of those. We'll let that dry and see what it looks like. That's going to be fine for what we're doing. Got a couple plates there, some interesting markings on it. Nothing too fancy, nothing too precise, but it's a little bit something extra to look at, a little extra detail in the scene. Well, that's going to pretty much conclude this episode 1. There is so much more to do for this project. Like I mentioned at the very beginning, there's so many different elements, and a lot of these are very small elements, a lot of painting. And that's what I think we'll do on the next episode, is that we'll paint out those buildings. I think that would be a good place to go next. But then we also have the figures to paint out. We have, of course, the groundwork and the scenery to do, and then the final composition of everything to put into place. So until the next one, take care, everybody, and happy modeling.